What's up, everybody? Pastor Matt here. Thanks for checking into the YouTube channel. Hey, today I want to do a kind of a short video just thinking through some issues related to the ongoing discussion between those who advocate for a Textus Receptus position and those who advocate for a critical text position. This is a matter that I've been thinking about for more than a year, maybe 2 years. Doing a lot of concerted effort on my part to rationally and as objectively and faithfully, thoughtfully thinking through this debate, trying to come to some conclusions on my own. And I've kind of come to the position by this point that I am a critical text guy as over against a TR only advocate. And in this short video, I'm not going to go through all of the possible arguments, but I do want to suggest a few things that have been helpful to me to think through these things. A couple of prefactory thoughts here by way of just kind of initiating the discussion between us. First, I really do impute the best possible motives to everybody that is in this so-called debate. I truly regard it as an in-house debate amongst sincere Bible-believing Christians. I'm sure there are those out there that have more dastardly motivations for whatever side they may want to hold on this, but I would assume that the large majority of people who discuss this kind of thing have the best of motivations. They want to know the Lord, they want to truly understand the Scriptures, and they want to have the best possible Greek New Testament text underlying their English translations and so forth. This is largely, of course, a scholarly debate. And so, as many people have said previous times before, whether you choose the Textus Receptus, which is the Greek New Testament text of the Reformation era, underlying some of the great old translations such as the King James Version, also more modernly the New King James Version, etc., or whether you advocate for a critical text position, we all know that whatever side you fall on, the real difference in your Bible is very, very small. That's been said many times before. And not only that, but even though I have sort of recently come to the critical text position, I do still have a great respect and admiration for those of you who disagree with me. So this is not a polemical video. This is not some kind of shot across the bow on my part to those who disagree. There are good guys out there. I know Jeff Riddle. I doubt, maybe he watches my channel. I don't know. He follows me on Twitter. But I impute the best kind of possible motivations to him and others out there who hold the Textus Receptus position. But again, I have done quite a bit of objective pondering on that, and so I figured I'd just very briefly mention a few things that have led me in the direction of the critical text. Number one, and I think I'll have 5 here, I truly want to have all of the data before me. I have been working through the Greek New Testament for my devotions for more than a year now. It's taken me longer than I thought. I'm in 1 Peter. I'm getting sort of to the close here in the next couple months or so before I move on to the Septuagint of the Old Testament. And one day I was reading my Greek New Testament, this very one here. This is the UBS 4 that I have in my hand. And I was looking down at the notes and I was almost brought to tears because one particular text had a difficult reading. And this simple book in my hand, the UBS 4, had citations from the majority text, from the medieval texts, from the minuscules, from the majuscules, from the papyri. It mentioned some Latin, some Syriac. It had patristic quotations. And I thought to myself, my goodness, I am so thankful that I have in the critical text access to so many manuscripts and fragments throughout all of the ages, more than we've ever had at any point in Christian history. We literally to this day have more access to more knowledge on the texts and the manuscripts and the fragments than we ever have before. And I truly, truly believe that if Erasmus and Beza had access to the knowledge that we have today, even through the computer digitization of these old ancient manuscripts so that they don't continue to fall apart in our hands as they have become dust. They're made out of, such fragmentary pieces of matter. Papyrus is just so brittle and decomposes so easily. I truly believe that if Beza and Erasmus and the others, Stephanus, if they had what we had today, they would be moved to tears as I was when I was just looking at all of the informational resources. So I think that the critical text is better in that it simply is able to cull and to collate more of the data throughout the ages, and I prefer that. So secondly, this debate, in my mind, could really be reduced quite simply to a discussion on whether antiquity or majority is more important in your evaluation of any given reading. So here's what I mean by that. The critical text largely depends, and I think if we're honest, it largely depends and goes back to texts of a more ancient nature and origin than does the Textus Receptus. Now that may be debatable, but certainly we have discovered manuscripts and papyri that simply were not known at the time of the collation of what is the Textus Receptus. We now have older things than they had in the 1500s. And so the critical text, if it has to choose between antiquity and majority readings, it seems to prefer antiquity. Whereas if you're a Textus Receptus advocate, your main argument must be and is an argument based on majority readings. Now, I personally, and this is where I really struggled with this, I didn't have a dog in the fight. I didn't have a horse in the race, so to speak. I have only an intellectual curiosity and what I think is a pious desire to know the Lord through His Word. I had a hard time weighing that out. I mean, on one hand, if you've got 100 texts that say one reading, but you have a much older text that has a slight variance, well, which do you weigh as being more important, the majority or that which comes from antiquity, which is older? A lot of ways, that is the question. That is the state of the art of the question of this entire discussion. Now, one thing that is interesting, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute, the UBS is a great text as far as I'm concerned, but I love what the Cambridge Tyndale House Greek New Testament has done, and that they have basically kind of limited the scope of the manuscripts that they're interested in to the first 500 years of Christian history. If a reading can't be found in the first 500 years, then it's really not considered. They do stretch the boundaries a little bit for the book of Revelation due to the lesser number of manuscripts and papyri and other fragments that they have of Revelation. I think they go out to as much as the first 800 years of Christianity. But given that so many of the Byzantine texts are later than that, they're newer than that, the weight of the Tyndale House Greek New Testament really does stress antiquity. And this brings me to a theoretical new Greek manuscript text, what I would love to have. If somebody could set the boundary to try to balance between antiquity and majority in such a way that you said, okay, let's make this a majority text. Let's make a majority text reading. However, we're going to set parameters for that, and we're going to limit the parameters to the first 800 years. Then that'd be my text. I think that'd be a fantastic way to do it. I don't know that that's exclusively what the Tyndale House Greek New Testament has done, but I do like the principle of setting some kind of parameters, because the further you get out in terms of chronology from the writings of the apostles, you do have to kind of weigh, well, if I have 500 editions, but they're all 1,500 years old or 1,300 years old or whatever, then how much does that truly weigh? So you have to weigh that question out for yourself. I've been thinking about this, and I lean towards antiquity as being more valuable in considering a reading than majority. You could disagree with that, and you'll have your own conclusions, but that's what I came up with. The next item for me is, I think it's very, very important that we resist the temptation of what I will call English priority. And here's what I mean by that. If you are choosing your Greek New Testament text based on your preference for an English translation, then I think I would suggest you're doing that exactly backwards. I think we should select our English translation based on our preference of the Greek New Testament text, not the other way around. Now, that may bear some consideration for those of you who are in the King James onlyist camp, because I think, and I could be wrong here, but I suspect that a lot of the arguments in defense of the TR only position is really only sort of a cover for a defense of King James only advocacy. And if that's true, and only you would know that in your heart, then I think that is backwards. If you love the New King James, the NKJV, and you think the TR is right because ultimately you want to defend the New King James, then I think that's backwards. But the argument works both ways, because if you love the NIV or the NASB or the ESV or the LSB or many of the other newer English translations, and you're going to choose the critical text only because you love the ESV, then that too is backwards. And so I've had to ask myself that very question. Do I love the critical text because I'm an ESV guy? Or should I love the ESV because I'm a critical text guy? So either way, I think if we're working from English to the Greek, we're probably doing it backwards. And I had to do a soul search to make sure I wasn't defending a preferred Greek text based on a preferred English translation. And I think it would be fair for all of us to ask ourselves that same question. Next, and this has been helpful for me, I have found the conspiracy theories to be uncompelling. Now, most of the conspiracy theories are not necessarily from the TR only advocate brothers, but more so from the KJV only advocate brothers. And I've looked into several of these conspiracy theories, and I just don't think there's any there, if that makes sense. I don't find them to be rationally persuasive to me. Now, as I say that, let me just say, hey, I'll hear out your conspiracy theory, man. You want to tell me about UFOs? I would love to hear what you've heard about UFOs or seen or whatever. If you've got a rational explanation for the JFK assassination, or if you know something about the moon landing that I don't know, man, I am all ears. I'm down for good conspiracy theory. I'll give you a fair listen. And I gave some of these conspiracy theories a fair listen when it came to the text issues, and I found them to be rationally unpersuasive. So I do not believe, for instance, that the motivation of the critical text is to remove verses from the Greek New Testament. I don't believe that is true. If that were to be true, you would have to have some sort of a 2 millennia long cover-up where the modern Bible publishers are working in conspiracy with the Alexandrians of old and throughout the ages to remove certain verses from old ancient manuscripts and papyri. And I just find that incredible to the point of unbelievability. Neither do I find convincing that there is some sort of a moral there's a deleterious moral nature to the Alexandrian manuscripts, as over against the Byzantine manuscripts. Now, again, for those of you who aren't, maybe you're not up on the discussion here, the majority of the New Testament manuscripts that we have today are of a Byzantine nature. They come from the region formerly known as Cappadocia, more modernly known as Turkey, Asia Minor, etc. And they are numerically the majority. However, they are newer in time. They're not as old as some of the Alexandrian manuscripts. And so a lot of the conspiracy theory argument basically says, look, Alexandria, bad place. Those guys were bad. They were evil. They were heretics. Whereas the Cappadocians, whereas the Byzantines, all good. They were saints. They were pure. They had better intentions. They were better scholars. Yeah, I just don't attribute morality to geographic region. And so, though many people have made the argument that Alexandria was a bad place, shake your finger at Alexandria. I'm sorry, it just didn't work. It just didn't work as an argument for me. So, for those basic reasons, I have decided, as far as I know my own heart, that I'm going to be a critical text guy. And that doesn't mean that I don't love the Textus Receptus. I realize, of course, that the King James Version is a magnificent English translation, that the Lord did in fact use the King James as well as the Textus Receptus in the Reformation era for great ends and to bring about the revival of His church. However, I also see the Lord working marvelously through the critical text as well. And I don't buy the rationale that He's blessed the one and He has cursed the other. That doesn't work for me. So here's my plan for the foregoing future, just so you know where Matt Everhard is at on this topic right now, if you care where I'm at on this topic. First, my future plans. Number one, I'm going to finish my devotions in the UBS 4. I think that's, I mean, I just have to. I'm so far into it now. It would be crazy to turn around and change my mind about anything at this point. So I'm going to finish up my translation work on this. I only have a few books to go, and I'm full steam ahead, ready to do that. Second, when I complete the UBS 4, there is a strong possibility that I'm going to switch over to the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. I love what they did. I think it was brilliant to start with the Tregellus work, and I think it was brilliant to limit the scope, for the most part, to the most ancient manuscripts, especially within the first 500 years. That's what I really care about. I don't so much care about the most recent 500 years of manuscripts. I want to know what was in the first 500 years of manuscripts. And I think that the Tyndale House does an awesome job of collating that information for us. Having said that, if there was some discussion about a new printed TR text, some of my friends online are talking about maybe publishing something like that, a new edition of the Textus Receptus, and I instantly emailed those guys and I said, please, 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 we already have that. We already have that from Trinity TBS, right? Trinitarian Bible Publishers. Is that right? Did I get the acronym right? We already have that. We already have one of those. Please, please, please do a majority text, a straight majority. Give me a text with a straight majority. I would love that. I think that'd be awesome to have. And you can include the majority of texts, every single one of them. It'd be even better if it was a majority text from the first 1,000 years or the first 500 years. I think that would be awesome. Yeah, we need a new publication of the majority reading text, because as far as I know, the other ones that exist are either really expensive or no longer in print. Finally, and I'll end with this, I am open to listening to arguments on any specific given reading. I'm still going to remain open to it because I want to be a rational, logical, a person in which logical persuasion and reason avails. That's kind of who I want to be. So I'll listen to any argument on any text, and if we can go into Mark's longer ending, that is great. If you want to talk John's Gospel and some of the difficult readings there, or 1 John with me, I will hear any argument. However, at this point, I am going to use the critical text and critical text translations. That's where I've come down. You can disagree with me, and I'd love it if you did. In fact, you can comment on this YouTube video and tell me where I'm wrong. But know this, no matter what side you choose, I do love you lots, and I will chat with you later. See ya.